Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the year that kind of put everything together and made me feel like I finished the 4 years at MIT with success. As you've heard, the first 3 years were super hard. I felt very out of place, very irresponsible, very depressed. I think senior year, some things turned around that made it end on a brighter note. I'm Leah Batlle-Rafferty, and this is Memoirs of a Neurodivergent Latina. All right, so let's talk about this. Between junior and senior year, I got this cool internship that I think I told you about in the previous season with Steve Pinker, and it was this study with twins, and we would go and listen to them talk and try to understand how much grammar they were developing and how they were developing it. And it was a ton of fun. And it was the first internship that I did in college where I felt like I was a productive member of the team. I was there when I needed to be. I went out and caught recordings. I worked well. I won't say perfectly because I don't know, but I worked well. And I felt pretty proud of that work. I felt like, that was a good contribution to a really interesting problem. Then, senior year, this professor came. I think she was a visiting professor, Dr. Adele Diamond. She worked with behavioral, developmental type cognitive science stuff. And that was what I, as I've said before, was really interested in, working with babies, understanding how they learned and how their brain developed. And she pulled me in to do a lot of work with her studies, with the object permanence type stuff that she was doing. She had me help a ton with scheduling, with actually running the studies, with being part of it. And she treated me like a productive member of her team. Whenever I worked with her, I felt like she actually saw me as a benefit to her. Like I actually added. And that was a unique feeling because I had not felt that almost the entire time I'd been at MIT. I had worked with another professor the previous year, and like I said, my timing wasn't great, and I had all these issues, and the other professor definitely did not seem to think highly of me, whereas this professor definitely, it felt that way. I'm listed on her conference stuff and on a couple of her papers. It was good. So there was that. I think that helped me a lot in terms of the academics and in terms of feeling like I had pulled myself together after that horrible junior year. Senior year, my second boyfriend had left because he was 2 years ahead of me. So I didn't have a boyfriend. And I don't know if that affected some of the ways that I interacted with people. It's not that I didn't have a boyfriend, right? But it's that basic support that I had sort of taken for granted for a few years was no longer there. And maybe I socialized a little bit more because of it. Maybe the fact that I got those awesome leading roles in Gilbert and Sullivan actually boosted my confidence for the first time ever in college. So I think there were a lot of little things that started to make me feel accepted. Maybe not accepted by the people who were constantly around me in general, but accepted in some professional capacities, accepted in terms of having some kind of skill. Just, yeah, like I said, feeling like I was doing well. I think I managed to scrape up some money that year to go visit my boyfriend in Stanford at the time. And that was an awesome trip because I don't think I had ever, I don't want to lie, but I don't think I had ever been to California up to this point. I was East Coast almost all the way. And I don't remember my parents ever taking us to California. So this was a big deal for me. And I got to go to the Rodin Sculpture Garden and see the Gates of Hell and the Thinker. And I think that particular little piece of it, for some reason, stayed with me long after everything else had. Like, I loved that little park with the Rodin sculptures. And I think he took me to the Modern Museum of Art? Something like that, Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco. And that was scary as all heck because there was like a see-through floor and it had, you had to walk over the see-through floor to get to a particular level in the building. And I am deathly scared of heights, as I've said before. So that was nerve-wracking. Either way, you know, he was at the time a very calming influence. So going to see him also helped to ground me. Having my grades finally going up was fantastic. You know, I had pushed and pushed and pushed, and I always wondered if this was the semester where I should just give up and go home. And to get to senior year and just watch my grades actually finally start to climb. Like, I was figuring it out. I was doing it well. And I was just sort of putting myself together. I think by this point I had already accepted that for some reason people who I thought were close friends no longer wanted to talk to me. If you've listened to that episode, I think you can hear what happened and what probably did it. Since nobody ever told me, I don't know. But my assumption above and beyond everything else is that that's the moment that these things happened. I don't remember how I felt in terms of the living group. Like, I don't remember if I felt any better or any worse there that year. I don't remember if I had any particular job. Like, I had two things that I was voted in for. One which I didn't understand why. Actually, both of them I probably didn't understand why, because you've heard how I thought of myself. Like, I was a hermit. I was kind of out with people, but I then went and hid. So the fact that they made me the social director at one point, and I couldn't tell you what year I was the social director, just completely baffled me. I mean, I did my best, and I think people had fun, and I've heard that people kept the shirt I made. But that was interesting. And then the semester where I was voted in to deal with a computer room, because back then, you know, there was no internet cables or anything. But I don't think that was senior year, because I think senior year, the same person who I went with to these water wars and stuff at that one fraternity I was telling you about took over and actually started the process of getting real network connectivity to the Institute for us. So that was a little bit of a failure on my part, but I didn't honestly know what to do. Anyways, I don't think I had any elected things my senior year. I think the people who were going to stop talking to me had already stopped talking to me. I think I had come to terms with my situation, and nothing rocked the boat that year for me, right? Lots of positive things. And I managed to get into grad school in Washington University in St. Louis. And to me, that was really big because my grades had been bad. I'd been working hard, but I knew that I was not going to get into a prestigious grad school. There just was no way. And yet, here is this opportunity to go to WashU. So that was huge. I went and met with the professor there. My mom went with me, and my mom adored the professor. I liked the professor. The studies they were doing were intelligence across the life cycle and prefrontal cortex, so the part of you that does executive functioning. And I thought that was really neat. It fit very broadly with my interests. So I was super excited that, I had this acceptance after years of struggling. I had proved myself enough that somebody wanted me to come and work for them for a master's and a PhD. So that was significant. I think that also turned my senior year around. The end of my senior year when I graduated, it was the first time my father came up to Boston to see me. And it was so funny. He stayed with cousins of his in Newton, for those of you who know Massachusetts, and went and visited over there. And he came to my actual graduation and seemed to be so proud of me. And my dad was a very stoic man, so the fact that he was just like beaming at me was amazing. And there's so many little things from that trip that I remember. I think I took everyone to the No Name Fish restaurant because I always loved the fact that there was a place like that. He kept comparing driving in Boston to being in El Salvador. He said, nobody follows any of the signs, and the lanes aren't properly drawn in a lot of places. And he was like, this is totally nostalgia making, which, for most people would be terrifying. But for him, it was just like, wow, this is back to being in El Salvador. He was beaming with pride. It was amazing for me to validate everything he had worked for to get us here, and to show him, hey, look, you know what? You brought us here to succeed, and we did it, and we did it with your support. So that was huge for me. That was the year I stopped doubting that I was fit to be at MIT, which was another huge thing for me because I had spent almost my entire time there feeling like, I don't know why I'm here. Why would anyone have brought me in when I have clearly so little ability? So, so senior year sort of closed that chapter of my life in a positive way. I think the drama had mostly settled. The academics were up. The arts and things were doing well. And of course, my dad and the acceptance. So even after a horrific, I won't say horrific, even after a very, very hard 3 years, it's amazing that a year can turn everything around. My depression was so much better. Somebody somewhere, and back then there was no internet. Well, that's not true. The internet had just sort of started in my sophomore year. There were pages and there were websites, most of them were kind of static. There was a lot of multi-user experiences and ways to chat with other people. Somewhere, somebody pointed me at this book, and I still have it somewhere, but it talks about rational thinking, and it talks about how your brain talks to itself and how you need to listen to the words that you use to talk to yourself, and you need to change them. And it was a life changer for me. I don't know if I found that book junior year or senior year, but it was a life changer for me. It described how to listen to yourself saying, I can't, and changing that to, this will be really hard, or that's terrible, to something a little milder, like that was a really difficult moment. So ways to change the voice in your head so that you can keep yourself at a more steady level and you don't close off opportunities to help yourself. So I had read that book, and my depression, I don't know if I would say it was completely gone, but the aspects of it that made it so encompassing were mostly gone. I, still hurt over certain things and everything, but I was able to deal with them in a better context. I want to say there was some amazing thing that I did senior year that just, punctuated my entire 4 years in some way and made it incredibly memorable. And I don't think there was that. I think there was just, for once in 4 years, the calm, the start of the rebuild of my self-esteem, and the acceptance of where I was, what I could do, and that I was moving forward, that I was going to graduate, that I had managed it somehow despite pretty much failing an entire semester. And the pride that came with that I had dug myself out of that situation. This all to say, there's ups and downs, right? And you struggle through them, and then you get to these moments and you have breathing room. Struggles might happen again, but you take in the breathing room and the positive and the calm when it's there, and allow it to feed you a little bit so that you can keep going. Thank you for tuning in to Memoirs of a Neurodivergent Latina. This podcast was written, edited, and produced by me, Leah Batlle-Rafferty. All music is by Carlos Neda. To send us an email, feel free to send to moanl@labradsolutions.com. That's MOANL@labradsolutions.com. And our website is www.moanl.com. And this podcast is part of Labrad Solutions, Inc.